Hey guys, Nike here. I wanted to show you guys the condition damage build that I was using for Lupicus solo, and can also be used for any other solos you do. It's good for open world stuff. It's good for Queen's Gauntlet especially. It's good for soloing a Ra. I'm going to preface this before I get into it by saying that this is not a build you want to use in groups. The DPS potential in a full group is very suboptimal. If you bring this to a group, even a bad pug, you're going to be doing a lot less DPS than you'd be doing in a typical Berserker Warrior build. However, in solo situations, this build is very competitive with Berserker, and your kill times against most bosses in a solo situation are going to be comparable to what they would be in a Berserker build. And that's pretty cool, especially when you're so used to playing Berserker and you get to switch it up and play a condition damage build. So with that preface out of the way, we'll go into the gear first. The build is going to use all rabid gear on the armor, the weapons, and the trinkets. So that's going to maximize our condition damage and maximize our toughness and critical damage. The rune set we're going to use is Rune of the Aristocracy. Most people haven't heard of this rune. This is the rune that you get from the Codicus Manor dungeon vendors. This is basically the same as Rune of Strength, but it's for condition damage. It gives you the 45% might duration, and it also gives you 175 condition damage. The number 6 power of activating a skill, getting 3 might, not going to be so useful on a warrior. Another class like an engineer will get a lot of use out of that. But for a warrior, it is that part's not good. But the amazing thing is the 175 condition damage and the might stacking duration. In this particular build, you stack quite a bit of might. It's not unheard of when you're doing, say, a Lupicus solo to just be sitting there at 25 stacks of might for a very long time in a solo situation. And even in a condition damage build, once you're up to 25 stacks of might, your direct damage isn't a small number. You're still hitting for your auto attacks are critting for almost 2,000, so you're still doing pretty decent direct damage, and your conditions are just off the charts. So Rune of the Aristocracy is amazing. What's not amazing is that it's a lot of CM tokens to get all 6 pieces, and so you're going to have to do a lot of Codicus Manor, which is one of the least fun dungeons, I think, especially to pug. So good luck and have fun with Codicus Manor. But it's well worth it once you get your 6 runes of the Aristocracy, because they are really sweet. And incidentally, at least for a warrior, and probably for an engineer and a necro too, these are the best runes you can get for condition damage DPS. Although a necro, arguably, Rune of the Undead is better. But for a warrior, these are just over the top good as far as condition damage goes. For our weapons, we're going to use a sword, main hand, with Sigil of Strength. Sigil of Strength combos very well with the Rune of the Aristocracy. The Sigil of Strength allows us to maintain 8 stacks of might over time, which will get us to that 25 and keep us at that 25 for very long amounts of time, so we're doing the maximum damage possible. And the offhand sword is going to have Sigil of Bursting, which will add another 6% to your condition damage. It's quite strong. Our longbow is going to have, most importantly, a Sigil of Battle. Ideally, we're not going to swap to longbow too often, but when we do swap to longbow, we'll get the 3 stacks of might from the Sigil of Battle, and they are very long-lasting stacks, 20 seconds, plus the rune. So that's like... They're almost 30-second stacks of might, so they last a very long time. I use Sigil of Energy, since this is a solo build. Quite often I'm soloing champions or legendary mobs with this build, and when you have that, you're going to want the Sigil of Energy for the extra dodges. You're pretty much going to have, on your sword set, you're going to have your Riposte, which you're going to want to use, plus your normal 2 dodges. So chances are when you're on your sword set, you're going to have plenty. And when you switch to your longbow, you'll probably need that Sigil of Energy. If you don't feel you need Sigil of Energy, you can switch this to a Sigil of Geomancy, which will keep your bleed stacks topped off. So that's the gear. It's pretty straightforward. All rapid gear, runes of the aristocracy, sigil of strength, sigil of bursting, and a sigil of battle, and an optional sigil on your longbow. So as far as traits go, we will refund our traits, and I will show you how to load these out. The most important traits are arms. We're going to go all 6 into arms. Obviously, we have precise strikes, which is 33% chance on a critical hit to bleed your target. This is very helpful and helps the build maintain DPS. So that is why we go so deep into critical chance when we're not really a power build or direct damage build. It's because you want to maximize your precise strikes, because over time these add up. And then the first important trait is deep cuts. Bleeds you apply last 50% longer. This build, especially in conjunction with the food we're going to eat and the rest of our traits, we're going to get to 100% bleed duration. So when you do crit with precise strikes, you're going to be effectively having 6-second bleeds. And in 6 seconds, you attack roughly 8 times. You're going to crit on those about 80%, maybe a little bit higher. So you're looking at a pretty good uptime from precise strikes of about 4 bleed stacks with deep cuts. Very strong. Critical skills have an increased chance to crit. That's not going to be super useful because we don't really want to flurry with this build. Our next trait will be Blade Master. It'll increase our critical hit chance with a sword by 10%. It'll just help maximize the bleed stacks. Attack of Opportunity, 10% damage to bleeding foes. Not super relevant. Our foes will always be bleeding, but it makes our direct damage just a little bit better. It's still, the direct damage component is still very little compared to the bleeds and the rest of the conditions, but it does help. And then lastly, we take Dual Wield Agility. Dual Wield Agility will make you attack about 6 to 8% faster. That's going to result in more bleeds from precise strikes and more bleeds from your auto attacks, which will do considerable damage over time. So arms is by far the most important. Moving to strength, we're going to go 2 into strength. Reckless dodge is useful, but what we really want to take is the Great Fortitude. That's going to give us additional hit points. The main reason for going 2 into strength is because of the 10% condition duration. This will help us get to the 100% bleed duration, and will get us to 50% duration on our other conditions. So and really there's nothing better. You're not going to get more benefit from defense, and you're not going to get more benefit from 10 in tactics. So this is the best place to put it. Condition duration 10% is effectively, in a condition damage build, damage increased by 10%. So for 2 trait points, you increase your damage by 10%. That's fairly comparable to what you look for in a DPS build. And our last 6 will go all the way to the end of Discipline. Pretty much every trait in Discipline goes very well with a condition damage build. It is unfortunate that there's a direct damage trait here, but hey, the extra ferocity will make our small direct damage hit a little harder. The first we're going to take is Mighty Defenses, which you might say, wow, that is a really weird trait to take. I think it's really good in this build. We have gain might when you block an attack for 11 seconds. Well, we have riposte, so this works out to be every time you riposte, you get an extra stack of might. Free stack of might is a free stack of might, and everything will keep you topped off. If you're fine, you don't need this trait, you're capping out, you can take Warrior Sprint to move a little bit faster. That is a little bit, makes running through the world less annoying, through dungeons less annoying. Warrior Sprint, perfectly viable if you don't like Mighty Defenses. Mighty Defenses, you might say, oh, well, that's only 1 stack of might. Let's say you're running up to 3 mobs that have projectile attacks. Well, as you're running up to them, you start your riposte, you're going to block a whole bunch of projectiles. You'll get up to very high amount of might stacks just from the initial block. It can be really good depending on having good knowledge of what you're fighting against. So Mighty Defenses, very key. Versatile Rage, I should explain that as well. Gain adrenaline on a weapon swap. This build Does take advantage of fast hands and will swap from time to time, and building up the adrenaline afterwards is pretty good because it'll allow you to burst when you need to burst. Fast hands, everyone who plays a warrior build knows how good fast hands is. We do switch to our longbow from time to time, and we don't want to be stuck on our longbow for very long, so fast hands is very awesome. Next trait we're going to take is Signet Mastery. Signet Mastery in conjunction with the Runes of the Aristocracy means that our might stacks from the Signet, when active, last 43.5 seconds. The Signet cooldown is 48, so for a significant portion of time in the dungeon, you're going to have those 5 might stacks, so it really adds up when we're keeping our might stacks topped off. And then Versatile Power, gain might on a weapon swap. The might lasts 14.5 seconds with these runes. You're going to weapon swap probably twice every 14.5 seconds, so you're looking at keeping up permanently 2 to 4 stacks of might over time, extra just from this passive trait. And then lastly, we're going to take Burst Mastery. Your burst skills deal more damage and cost less. The deal damage we don't really care about. The cost less is really good. It'll allow us, if need be, after a burst, to burst again once we swap back. So how does the build play? For the most part, you're going to want to use your sword auto attack as much as possible. Sword auto attack with the bleeds is just an insane amount of damage. You want to keep your bleeds as close to 25 bleeds as possible. If you were just auto attacking a dummy that never moved, your auto attacks and everything else alone would be sufficient to get you to 25 stacks of bleeds and keep you very close to there over time. In actual combat where you have to dodge and get out of the way and reposition, you're not going to always be at 25 stacks of bleeds, so you just want to get into your auto attacks as often as possible. The other thing to consider is your impale. You will want to impale on cooldown, with the duration of Torment being 13.5 seconds before we eat our food, and probably a little bit longer. You can pretty much always keep 5 stacks of Torment. Sometimes it'll go up to 6, sometimes it'll even go up to 7 constantly. You want to do that. You always want to make sure that you're impaling immediately on cooldown. It's the one thing that's definitely worth stopping your auto attacks for. So when do you swap weapons? This build, the burns from your Fan of Fire and your Fire Field last a very, very long time. You'll build up when you burst a boss down, significant amount of burns on him, probably like 15 seconds of burns. So generally speaking, you're going to put about 15 seconds of burning on a boss when you swap to your longbow. So we'll assume the boss is burning, and now his burns are starting to wear off. You can see that he has about 1 second left of burning. You'll swap back to your longbow, Fan of Fire, Combustive Shot to put the fire field down on him, blast it to get very long-lasting might stacks for yourself, pin down, and then swap back to sword and go right back to work. You don't want to camp your longbow. You don't want to get like a second fire field. You don't want to wait for your pin down to come up. You very rarely want to ever auto attack. You just want to go swap to longbow, Fan of Fire, fire field, blast the fire field, pin down, swap back. And then when do you swap back to longbow? You watch the boss's con bar, his debuffs. When you see that burn that you've applied is about to wear off and he's close to not burning, that's when you swap back. You just want to do it often enough to maintain the perma burn. Also, there's going to be some harder fights where you have to dodge a lot, and you might actually use up all your dodges and all your ripostes. Remember, you have the energy sigil on your longbow, so you can swap to longbow for the extra dodge to save your life. So it's definitely worth considering. For utility skills, I think this is the standard setup. You want Signet of Rage because it combines so well with the Runes of the Aristocracy. For Great Justice for the exact same reason. Banner of Strength is great because you benefit from the condition damage and the strength and the power. Because like I said, the build has base only 1100 power, but when you're at 25 stacks of might and your banner's down, you're close to 2300 power, which is what a Berserker build has before any buffs. So I'm not saying it's anywhere close to a Berserker build, but I'm also saying you can't consider the damage 0 either. You're still dealing 1 to 2,000 direct damage per second in addition to your condition damage, so it's not a negligible number. It's definitely worth considering. And then Signet of Fury, this is kind of variable. The extra chance to crit is always welcome. If you need extra dodges because you're soloing a particularly difficult boss, Signet of Stamina, also very useful. If you ever need stability for any reason, Balance Stance is also good there too. So those are your options. So for consumables, I do koi cakes and the potent tuning crystals. The koi cakes add another 40% condition duration, 70 condition damage, and then the tuning crystals give you 6% of your toughness to condition damage and 4% of your vit. This build, as you can see, where is it? Has a lot of toughness, so it's not not a tiny number. So where is our condition damage? Condition damage is 1867 with the food and the tuning crystal. With might, you're looking at another almost 900. So the condition damage gets insanely high with this build. Then you drop your banner and you get another. So you're looking at almost 3,000 condition damage when the build's fully pumping along. You do pretty significant amount of damage. I do have the video on my channel of me soloing Lupicus with the build, so you can see how it plays in action. My rotations were pretty bad, just because I was learning this build and better DPS rotations. I believe Dub from the guild RT has an even faster video on his channel. So if you want to see someone doing even better rotations, you can check that out. Hopefully you have a pretty good idea of how to use it from the description I went over. But that's about it. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And again, I know I started the video by saying this. I'm going to end it by saying it. Please don't run this build in groups. You're just going to be a drag on your team, and you're not going to be doing as much DPS as people expect from you. And it's just kind of sad to be such a drag on your team. So don't do it in groups. But if you are into soloing stuff and you are looking for a build to do Queen's Gauntlet with, and you like soloing a Ra, and you want to give a Lupicus solo a try with a condition damage build, yeah, check this build out. You don't have to go crazy like me and get full ascended. Doing it with exotics is perfectly fine, and you'll get good results. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and have a great day. And definitely hit me up in the comments with any questions.